He spent 5 years working overtime, cursing his greedy boss, never knowing the billionaire owner of the entire company was actually his own wife. But the day he snapped, the day he yelled at her, told her she knew nothing about real work, and kicked her out of his office. She quietly removed her wedding ring, placed it on the desk, and said just 5 words that froze him in place. "I own everything around you." And that's when his world collapsed. What happened next will shock you. Mark had spent the last 5 years grinding at the same job, long hours, constant stress, barely any recognition. Every morning he'd wake up before sunrise, rushing to beat the traffic, clutching his lukewarm coffee while thinking the same thing: one day the owner of this stupid company will pay for treating us like machines. Everyone at his workplace talked about the mysterious owner. Some said he lived in Dubai, some said he was an old man who inherited his wealth. Others claimed he was a ruthless business shark who had never even stepped foot inside the office. No one had ever seen him. There were only rumors, and Mark hated every single one. At home, however, his wife Elena tried her best to keep him grounded. She listened to his rants, supported him, cooked his meals, and encouraged him to stay strong. She knew how stressful his job was, and every night when he slumped on the couch exhausted, she would massage his shoulders and whisper, "Things will get better, love, trust me." But Mark didn't know the truth. He didn't know that every evening after he went to sleep, Elena sat in her home office handling million-dollar contracts. He didn't know that the emails he complained about at dinner were directly coming from her. He didn't know that the mysterious owner of Westbridge Corporation, the company he dedicated his life to, was none other than his own wife. Elena kept her identity hidden for a reason. When they first met, Mark was struggling financially. She had watched the world treat him differently because he had nothing. She wanted to see how someone loved when they had zero to gain, so she hid her wealth, her companies, her power, everything. For years, she balanced two identities: loving wife at home, billionaire owner in the shadows. But the pressure was building. The company had recently launched a new project, one Elena knew would change everything. Tension had increased, deadlines tightened, and Mark's patience snapped. He was tired of being ignored, tired of being pushed, tired of a boss he thought didn't exist. Then came the day. The day Elena decided to visit the office not as his wife but as the owner. She walked in wearing a simple blazer, no jewelry except her wedding ring, hopping to quietly evaluate how the team worked. She didn't expect Mark to see her. She didn't expect him to recognize her, but he did. And he exploded. "Who even are you?" he barked, slamming his files on the desk. "You're all the same, sitting around giving orders while we break our backs. If you knew anything about real work, you'd fix the damn system instead of pretending to be in charge." The room froze. Elena stood silently. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't defend herself. She simply looked at the man she loved, the man who had no idea who was standing in front of him. Slowly, she removed her wedding ring, placed it on his desk, and whispered, "Mark, I own the company." And everything changed in one heartbeat. Mark's face drained of color. For a moment, he thought she was joking, some twisted attempt to calm him down, but Elena's eyes were steady, serious, hurt. "What do you mean you own the company?" he stammered. Elena didn't answer. She simply turned and walked toward the conference room. Her assistant, who had been silently waiting outside, followed her. That was the moment Mark realized she wasn't bluffing. The staff people he'd worked with for years were bowing their heads with respect as she passed. Every step she took was a confirmation of the truth he never saw coming. Mark stood frozen, mind racing, replaying every complaint he had ever made at home, every insult he had thrown at the owner, every time Elena had defended the company and told him to be patient. He thought she was just being supportive. He never imagined she was protecting herself. His chest tightened. Inside the conference room, Elena sat at the head of the table like she had done 1,000 times before, just never in front of him. Executives gathered quickly, all addressing her as Madam Westbridge, the name Mark had cursed countless times. He hovered outside the glass door, watching, humiliated. She was confident, calm, completely different from the soft-spoken wife he knew at home, and that terrified him, because it meant one thing. He didn't really know his wife. Meeting after meeting began, and she didn't acknowledge him once. She spoke of expansions, restructuring, performance, the same decisions he had always blamed on a cruel, invisible billionaire. Now that Billionaire had his wife's voice. As the hours passed, Mark's panic grew. He couldn't work, couldn't think. Everyone in the office was whispering. To them, he looked like an employee who had just disrespected the owner in the worst way possible. To him, he felt like a husband who had betrayed the one person who had always been on his side. When Elena finally stepped out of the meeting, her eyes were cold, not angry, just deeply disappointed. She walked past him without a word. Mark followed her. "Elena, please talk to me," he begged. She stopped near the elevator, turning slowly. "You said I know nothing about real work," she whispered. "But I've been working day and night to build the life you live in. I kept everything hidden so you'd never feel small, but today you made me feel small." Mark's heart cracked. He reached for her hand, she pulled away. "I don't know who you are anymore," she said softly, "and I don't know if you know who I am either." The elevator door slid open. "Elena, please don't go home without me," he whispered. She stepped in. "I'm not going home," she said, "not tonight." The doors closed. And for the first time in his marriage, Mark felt what it was like to lose everything. That night felt endless. Mark sat alone in their apartment, staring at the empty space where Elena usually kept her slippers, the half-filled tea mug she hadn't drunk, the framed wedding photo that suddenly felt like a memory from another lifetime. He replayed everything, the way her voice cracked, the way she didn't look back, the way she said she wasn't coming home tonight. He had lost his temper at work many times before, but never like this, and never at someone who mattered. Hours later, unable to breathe from the guilt, Mark grabbed his jacket and rushed out. He didn't know where she was staying. But he knew one place she always retreated to when overwhelmed: the company's private penthouse. The place he never even knew existed. The building security recognized him. They'd seen him with Elena before, but this time their expressions were stiff, professional, different, as if they now saw him not as the owner's husband but the man who had disrespected their boss. Mark swallowed the humiliation and rode the elevator up. When he reached the penthouse, the lights were on. He knocked softly. The door opened just a crack. Elena stood there, makeup gone, hair tied loosely, eyes red not from anger but from exhaustion. She looked like someone who had been holding the weight of the world for too long. "Why are you here?" she asked, voice flat. Mark took a shaky breath. "Because I didn't come to explain, I came to apologize." She didn't open the door any wider. "I should have trusted you more," he said. "I should have talked instead of exploding. I hurt you, I humiliated you, and I didn't even realize the stress you were carrying. I'm sorry, Elena, for everything." Her expression flickered just a little. He continued. "You think I don't know who you are? I know exactly who you are. You're the woman who stayed up for me when I came home late, the woman who pushed me to grow, the woman who chose to hide her power just to protect my pride. You're the strongest person I've ever known." His voice cracked. "And if you want to leave me, I'll understand. But I needed to look you in the eyes and say this: I love you, with or without the billions, with or without the title." Silence. Then Elena finally opened the door all the way. She stepped aside, allowing him in. It wasn't forgiveness, at least not yet, but it wasn't rejection either. It was a chance. Mark walked in slowly, heartbeat thundering, knowing this was the moment everything balanced on a thread: his marriage, his dignity, his future. Elena turned toward him, tears gathering in her eyes. "I needed to hear that," she whispered, "but love isn't enough if there's no respect." Mark nodded. "I know, and I'm ready to earn yours back, no matter how long it takes." For the first time since the truth came out, she let out a heavy, trembling breath. This right here was the moment everything could fall apart. Or finally begin to heal. The next morning, the city woke under a soft, golden sunrise, but inside the penthouse, everything felt fragile and new. Mark and Elena sat across from each other at the breakfast counter, not as boss and employee, not as billionaire and worker, but as two people trying to rebuild what had cracked. Elena stirred her tea slowly. "Mark, I didn't hide my identity to play games. I hid it because I loved the way you treated me when you thought I had nothing." She looked at him with tired, honest eyes. "I wanted to be loved for myself, not my money." Mark nodded, ashamed and humbled. "I loved you then, I love you now, but I understand why you're hurt. I didn't just disrespect a stranger, I disrespected you without even knowing it." Elena exhaled, her shoulders dropping a little. It's not just the yelling, Mark, it's the fact that you never trusted me enough to share how much it was breaking you. You bottled it up until it exploded. He swallowed hard. I know, and I don't want to be that man anymore. They talked for an hour about communication, about trust, about the double life she'd lived, about the pressure he had been carrying alone. Slowly, the walls between them began to soften. Then unexpectedly, Elena reached into her pocket. She held up her wedding ring. The same ring she had placed on his desk during the worst moment of their marriage. Do you still want this? She asked quietly. Mark didn't answer with words. He gently took the ring, kissed her hand, and slid it back onto her finger, this time with the weight of everything they had learned. A tear rolled down her cheek. Then come with me, she whispered. She took him to the office, not as an employee being scolded, but as a partner. The entire staff looked shocked when the owner walked in holding hands with the very man who had yelled at her the day before. Elena called a private meeting with HR and the leadership team. I want Mark transferred, she announced. Mark tensed. To a better department, she continued, where he can grow without the pressure he's been under and where his work is recognized. The room relaxed. Mark felt his throat tighten. She wasn't punishing him. She was helping him stand again. Over the next weeks, their relationship began to heal. Mark learned about her world, Elena learned about his struggles. They built a new understanding, one based not on secrets but on honesty. And one evening, as they walked out of the office together, Mark looked at her with a smile. You know, you being a billionaire still scares me a little. Elena laughed softly. Good, it means you'll behave. He pulled her close. I'll do more than behave, I'll be better. And this time, he meant every word.